After being offered 10 mail-order brides, the cowboy said, "Give me the one no one wanted." Jack Reynolds was a man of quiet strength, the kind of cowboy who had spent his life under the wide, open skies of Texas. His ranch was large, stretching over rolling hills and dotted with clusters of oak and mesquite trees. The land had been in his family for generations, though now Jack managed it alone. The mornings began with the smell of hay and the soft lowing of cows, the sound of horses pawing at the stable floor. Jack liked the rhythm of it, the steady routine, the honest labor. But there was one thing that his land could not provide: companionship. Years ago, Jack had hoped to find someone to share his life with. He had known a few women who came and went, but life on a remote ranch was not easy, and few stayed. Friends and family had long passed or moved away. The town nearby was small, and Jack's work left him little time to socialize. Some nights, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed orange and pink across the sky, he felt the weight of his loneliness more than ever. The stars came out, bright and countless, but they could not fill the emptiness beside him. One morning, while Jack was mending a fence along the eastern pasture, he received a letter that would change the course of his quiet life. It was from a local matchmaking agency, a small office in the county seat that specialized in connecting lonely ranchers with women looking for a fresh start. Jack had seen such letters before, but this one was different. It wasn't just a single profile, it was 10. 10 women, each described as a perfect match for a man like him. Jack sat on the wooden fence, wiping the sweat from his brow as he unfolded the papers. The descriptions were carefully written, praising beauty, charm, and compatibility. Each woman had her own story. Some were nurses, some were teachers, and some had experience with ranch life. But as Jack read, he felt a strange emptiness. The words on the pages promised convenience and ease, but they did not speak to what Jack truly wanted. He wanted a woman with heart, with resilience, someone who would understand the rhythm of ranch life and the quiet strength it demanded. He looked at the photographs accompanying the profiles. Some women smiled brightly, their eyes shining with what the agency called promise. Others posed elegantly, their hair perfectly styled, their clothes immaculate. But Jack's eyes kept returning to the last photograph, a woman who seemed almost forgotten at the bottom of the pile. Her smile was small, not perfect, but there was warmth in it. Her eyes were steady, and they carried a sense of life lived fully despite difficulties. The agency had labeled her as less desirable, mentioning that she had faced challenges and was not ideal by conventional standards. Jack leaned back against the fence, his hat shading his eyes from the sun. Most men in town would have chosen one of the first 9 women, bright and polished, someone who looked perfect on paper. But Jack had never been a man who followed the crowd. He had always believed in the value of the person beneath the surface, the qualities that didn't show up in a photograph or a neatly written profile. He knew what he wanted, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else. That evening, Jack sat in the quiet of his kitchen, a small stove warming the room. The wind rustled through the trees outside, carrying the faint scent of fresh grass and the distant sound of a horse's hooves. He sipped his coffee slowly, thinking about the lives of these 10 women. He imagined them stepping off a bus, suitcase in hand, hoping for a new beginning. It was an overwhelming thought, and yet his decision had become clear. He didn't want someone perfect by society's standards. He wanted someone real, someone who had faced life with courage and kindness, someone the world might have overlooked. The next morning, Jack called the agency. The woman on the other end was cheerful, expecting him to pick one of the first-choice brides. Jack surprised her. "Give me the one no one wanted," he said, his voice calm and certain. There was a pause on the line, a small sound of disbelief. "Are you sure, mister?" "Reynolds," the agent asked. "She's not considered a top choice." "I'm sure," Jack replied. "I don't want someone top choice. I want someone who needs a chance, someone who can be herself without pretending. That's the one I want." The agent hesitated but eventually agreed, promising to arrange the journey for the woman Jack had chosen. Jack hung up and returned to the porch, looking out at the fields. The sun was climbing higher, painting the land with golden light. For the first time in a long while, Jack felt a spark of anticipation. He didn't know what the future would hold, but he felt ready to face it, to share his life with someone who was truly real. Over the next few days, Jack prepared the ranch. He cleaned the guest room, swept the floors, and made sure the horses and livestock were well cared for. He even planted a small garden near the kitchen window, imagining the woman he had chosen tending it with him. There was excitement in the air, mixed with nervousness. Jack wasn't sure how she would react to the ranch, to the hard work, or to the quiet solitude. But he knew that life was about taking chances, about opening your heart even when the path ahead was uncertain. Finally, the day arrived. Jack stood at the edge of the driveway, dust swirling around his boots as a small truck approached. His heart beat faster than it had in years. The truck slowed, and a woman stepped out. She was not tall or striking, not polished like the agency's other candidates. But she carried herself with a quiet confidence, a gentle presence that made the air seem lighter. Her eyes met Jack's, steady and honest, and in that moment he knew he had made the right choice. Jack greeted her with a firm handshake and a welcoming smile. She introduced herself as Maria. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying a warmth that immediately eased some of Jack's tension. She had traveled far, facing uncertainty and doubt, yet here she was, stepping into a life she knew little about. Jack admired her courage. As they walked toward the ranch house, Jack showed Maria around, pointing out the fields, the barns, and the horses. Maria listened carefully, asking questions about the work and the routines. She seemed eager to learn, but there was also a sense of calm about her, as if she understood that life on the ranch was not just about labor but about patience, respect, and harmony with the land. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jack realized how much he had missed having someone to share these moments with. Maria didn't try to impress him or change who she was. She simply shared her thoughts, her laughter, and her quiet observations. Jack felt a connection that he had never experienced with anyone else. It was simple, genuine, and unpretentious, the kind of bond that grew from understanding and respect rather than appearances. The night grew darker, the stars twinkling like distant fires in the vast sky. Jack and Maria talked long into the evening, sharing stories of their pasts, their hopes, and the small dreams they carried. Jack learned about Maria's life, the challenges she had faced, and the resilience that had brought her this far. In return, Maria listened to Jack's stories of the ranch, of long days spent caring for the land and animals, and of the quiet loneliness that had once weighed heavily on him. By the time they went inside to settle for the night, Jack felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He knew the road ahead would not always be easy. Ranch life was demanding, and building a life together required patience and effort. But he also knew that he had chosen wisely. Maria was someone who could face life with strength and grace, someone whose heart matched the honesty and steadfastness of his own. As Jack lay in bed that night, he thought about the agency, the 10 profiles, and the world's idea of a perfect match. None of that mattered anymore. What mattered was this moment, this connection, and the promise of something real. He realized that sometimes the people who are overlooked by others are the ones who hold the greatest potential for love and happiness. Jack closed his eyes, a small smile on his lips. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new routines, and new moments of learning. But for the first time in a long while, Jack felt ready, not just to live on his ranch, but to share his life with someone who truly belonged there, someone who had been waiting for a chance, just as he had. And in the quiet night, under the endless expanse of stars, Jack Reynolds felt hope stir in his chest. A hope that came from choosing the one no one else wanted, and discovering that sometimes the ones who are overlooked are the ones who make life most meaningful. Maria Sanchez stepped onto the dusty driveway of Jack Reynolds' ranch with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had traveled a long way to reach this remote part of Texas, leaving behind the familiar streets of her hometown, the friends she had made, and the routines she had built for herself. Her suitcase was worn from the journey, her shoes dusted with dirt from the long ride, but her eyes carried a spark of determination. She had been rejected before, overlooked and dismissed for reasons she could never understand. Yet here she was, taking a leap into the unknown. Jack walked toward her, his tall frame casting a shadow in the late afternoon sun. He greeted her with a firm handshake and a smile that was both warm and genuine. "Welcome to the ranch, Maria," he said, his voice steady and calm. "I hope you're ready for a new adventure." Maria returned his smile, her nervousness softening. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds," she replied. "I think I am. I want to try my best." Her voice was soft but confident, carrying the quiet strength of someone who had faced challenges before and refused to be broken by them. Jack gestured toward the ranch house. "Let me show you around first. There's a lot to see, and I want you to feel at home." Maria followed, taking in the sight of the sprawling fields, the horses grazing in the pastures, and the barns standing sturdy against the wind. The ranch was alive with movement and purpose, each corner telling a story of work, care, and patience. As they walked, Jack explained the routines of ranch life. "The mornings start early. We check on the livestock, feed the animals, and make sure everything is in order. It's hard work, but it's honest work. Are you ready for that?" he asked, glancing at her. Maria nodded eagerly. "Yes, I want to learn. I've worked hard before, and I don't mind learning new things." Her eyes sparkled with determination. "I may not know everything about ranch life, but I can learn." Jack felt a warmth in his chest. Many women might have been intimidated by the tasks ahead or the simplicity of life here, but Maria seemed different. She wasn't looking for a perfect, easy life. She was ready to step in and be part of it. He respected that more than he could say. The first days were filled with introductions, routines, and small adjustments. Maria quickly learned how to care for the horses, how to brush their coats, clean the stables, and lead them into the pastures. She stumbled a few times, of course, and Jack had to correct her posture or the way she held the reins, but she never complained. Instead, she laughed at her mistakes and tried again, showing a patience and resilience that impressed him. Jack also introduced her to the cattle, explaining how to check their health and guide them safely across the pastures. Maria listened carefully, absorbing each word, her eyes bright with curiosity. She asked questions, not out of doubt, but out of a genuine desire to understand and do well. Jack noticed how she observed the animals, noticing their moods, their behaviors, and their small signals. It was clear she had a natural empathy that went beyond simple instructions. Evenings on the ranch were calm, almost magical. After a long day of work, Jack and Maria would sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. They shared simple meals, often cooked together, and talked about their lives. Maria spoke of her past struggles, the times she had felt invisible to the world, and the dreams she still held close to her heart. Jack listened, sharing stories of the ranch, of long days spent caring for the land, and of the quiet loneliness he had felt before her arrival. The bond between them grew slowly, built on shared respect and understanding. Maria admired Jack's dedication to the ranch, the way he treated the animals with care and patience, and how he approached each task with quiet determination. Jack, in turn, admired Maria's courage and resilience, her willingness to step into a life so different from her own and face challenges without hesitation. But it wasn't all easy. Maria faced moments of doubt and struggle. Early one morning, as she attempted to move a stubborn horse into the stable, the animal resisted and she stumbled. Jack quickly stepped in, guiding the horse gently while keeping Maria safe. "It's okay," he said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You'll get the hang of it. Horses sense fear, but you're learning, that's what matters." Maria nodded, taking a deep breath. "I just don't want to let you down," she admitted. "You won't," Jack replied firmly. "I didn't ask for perfection, I just want honesty, effort, and heart." "You have all three, Maria. That's enough." Their days continued with this mix of work, learning, and quiet companionship. Maria began to anticipate the rhythms of the ranch, knowing when to feed the animals, when to check the fences, and how to move with the land rather than against it. Jack noticed her confidence growing, and he felt a sense of pride and admiration he hadn't experienced before. As the week went on, they faced a small crisis that tested their partnership. A sudden storm rolled in, unexpected and fierce, bringing strong winds and heavy rain. The cattle grew restless, and some horses panicked in their stables. Jack and Maria worked side by side, securing the animals, reinforcing fences, and calming the frightened creatures. Maria moved with a calm determination that surprised even Jack. She lifted gates, guided animals, and offered steady reassurance, never showing fear despite the storm raging around them. By the time the storm passed, both were drenched and exhausted, but the ranch had survived without harm. Jack looked at Maria, seeing her hair plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through, yet her eyes shining with resilience. He felt a surge of admiration and something deeper, an unspoken connection that had grown stronger with every shared challenge. The next days were quieter, but no less meaningful. Jack introduced Maria to the community, a small circle of neighbors who had been curious about the new arrival. Some had doubted Jack's choice, whispering about why he would select the unwanted one. But as Maria worked alongside Jack, showing her kindness, intelligence, and diligence, the neighbors began to notice. Respect replaced doubt, and admiration slowly took root. Even in simple moments, their bond deepened. They shared laughter while cooking meals, comforted each other when small frustrations arose, and celebrated little victories together. Maria found joy in the small routines of ranch life. The way the sun touched the fields in the morning, the sound of a calf's first call, the smell of fresh hay in the barn. Jack found joy in her presence, in the way she noticed things he often overlooked, in her thoughtful observations and gentle humor. At night, as they sat together on the porch, the stars stretched endlessly above them, Maria spoke quietly. "I never thought I'd find a place where I belong," she said. Jack listened, understanding the weight behind her words. She had been overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued for much of her life. Yet here on this remote ranch, she had found acceptance, purpose, and a sense of belonging. Jack reached out, placing a hand over hers. "You belong here," he said simply, "not because of what anyone else thinks, but because of who you are. I've waited a long time to find someone like you, someone real, honest, and kind. That's all that matters." Maria's eyes glistened with gratitude. She had taken a chance, leaving behind the familiar for the unknown, and it had brought her here, to a place where she was seen, respected, and valued. The bond between her and Jack was no longer just about the practicalities of living on a ranch. It had become something deeper, a connection forged through shared effort, trust, and understanding. As the days turned into weeks, they continued to build their life together. The routines of ranch work became easier for Maria, her confidence growing with each passing day. Jack found himself looking forward to each morning, not just for the work, but for the shared moments with Maria, the laughter, the quiet talks, and the simple joy of companionship. Despite the initial skepticism from the community and the challenges they faced, Jack and Maria were creating something remarkable. They were building a partnership based not on appearances, convenience, or expectation, but on genuine respect, shared effort, and the quiet strength that comes from facing life together. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the fields in a golden glow, Jack and Maria sat on the porch, side by side. The air was warm, filled with the scents of grass, horses, and the distant river. They shared a meal, their conversation easy and comfortable, filled with laughter and reflection. Jack realized that for the first time in many years, he felt a sense of completeness, not because life was perfect, but because he had found someone who understood and valued him. Maria leaned back, watching the sky shift from gold to deep purple. "I never thought life could be this peaceful," she said softly, "and yet it feels full, alive, and right." Jack nodded, his gaze on the horizon. "Life has a way of surprising us," he replied. "Sometimes the best things come from the choices no one else understands." In that moment, under the vast Texas sky, they both understood that they had found something rare and precious. It wasn't just companionship. It was trust, respect, and a bond that could withstand the challenges ahead. The path was not always easy, but together they were ready to face it. And as night fell, wrapping the ranch in a blanket of stars, Jack and Maria felt the quiet satisfaction of having taken a chance on each other. They knew the road ahead would bring work, trials, and new challenges, but they also knew that together they could meet anything. The spark of connection that had begun on that first day was growing into something enduring. A partnership built on honesty, effort, and the courage to see the worth in someone no one else had wanted. The weeks on the ranch passed steadily, each day bringing its own rhythm and small victories. Maria had grown more confident in her tasks. She could handle the horses, manage the cattle, and even mend fences alongside Jack. Yet she was still learning the deeper nuances of ranch life, reading the weather, anticipating the needs of the animals, and understanding the land as more than just property, but as a living, breathing part of their lives. Jack watched her quietly one morning as she moved through the stable with gentle efficiency, her hands steady as she brushed a chestnut mare's coat. He felt a mix of pride and admiration. Maria had arrived timid and unsure, but now she carried herself with a sense of competence and grace. He realized that her presence had changed the ranch, not just because of her help, but because she had brought warmth, laughter, and care into a place that had once been quiet and lonely. But life on a ranch was not without challenges. One hot afternoon, dark clouds began gathering in the distance, a storm brewing faster than either of them had expected. Jack noticed the wind picking up and the animals becoming restless. He called Maria over, his voice carrying urgency. "We need to move the cattle closer to the barn before the storm hits. Some of them are skittish and I don't want anyone hurt." Maria nodded, her expression focused. "I'm ready," she said. She grabbed a rope and followed Jack to the pasture, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The sky darkened rapidly, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and lightning streaked across the sky. The animals sensed the change too, their nervous movements making the task more difficult. Working side by side, Jack and Maria guided the cattle toward the barn. Jack called out instructions, and Maria responded quickly, moving with calm efficiency. She spoke to the animals in soft, steady tones, and surprisingly, they responded to her voice. Jack watched her in awe. She wasn't just following his lead, she was thinking ahead, anticipating the animals' behavior and acting with confidence. By the time they had secured the last of the cattle, the storm was in full force. Rain poured down in sheets, wind bending the trees and whipping the grass around them. Maria shivered but refused to step back, standing beside Jack as they surveyed the pasture. "We did it," she shouted over the roar of the storm, a triumphant smile on her face. Jack nodded, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth despite the tension. "That's right," he said, his voice steady. "You kept your cool and you didn't let fear control you. I'm proud of you." Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest, a deep sense of accomplishment that had little to do with praise and everything to do with overcoming the challenge. She had faced the storm head-on, proving not just to Jack, but to herself, that she was capable and strong. The storm passed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving behind a fresh, earthy scent and a sky painted in brilliant colors. Jack and Maria walked back to the ranch house, their clothes soaked, hair plastered to their faces but spirits lifted. That day became a turning point. They had faced a test together, and it had strengthened their trust and respect for one another. In the days that followed, life returned to its steady rhythm, but both Jack and Maria felt the subtle shift in their relationship. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, a recognition that they could rely on each other in difficult times. Maria grew bolder in her decisions, taking initiative with the animals and suggesting improvements in the ranch routines. Jack, in turn, began to share more of his personal thoughts, his dreams for the future, and even the small fears he had carried quietly for years. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jack spoke softly. "Maria, you've changed more than just the ranch. You've changed me. I didn't realize how much I needed someone like you until you were here." Maria looked at him, her eyes wide with emotion. She had expected kindness and acceptance, but she had not expected this depth of honesty, this heartfelt acknowledgement of connection. "I feel the same, Jack," she replied. "I never imagined I'd find a place where I belonged, where I could make a difference and be appreciated for who I am. You've given me that chance." Her words were simple, but their weight carried deeply. They were not declarations of love yet, not promises of forever, but acknowledgments of the bond that had grown through shared effort, trust, and understanding. Life, however, had a way of testing even the strongest bonds. One morning, Maria received a letter from her hometown. She hesitated to open it, fearing that it might contain reminders of the past she had worked so hard to leave behind. With Jack nearby, she carefully unfolded the envelope and began to read. The letter carried news of a family matter that required her attention, a situation that could take her away from the ranch for weeks, possibly months. Jack noticed the change in her expression, the flicker of worry that crossed her face. "What is it?" he asked gently, placing a hand on hers. Maria hesitated, then handed him the letter. Jack read quickly, his brow furrowing as he absorbed the details. The situation was serious but not impossible to manage. He looked at Maria, seeing the concern in her eyes and the tension in her posture. "You have to go if it's important," he said quietly. "We'll manage the ranch while you're away. You shouldn't worry about leaving. This is your family too, and they need you." Maria shook her head. "I don't want to leave, Jack. I've only just started to feel at home here. I'm afraid I'll be gone too long and things will change, or that I'll lose the life I've begun to build with you." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the depth of her concern. Jack squeezed her hand. "Nothing will change. You've already become part of this place, part of this life. I trust you to handle what you must, and I'll be here when you return. We'll face this together, even if we're apart for a while." His words brought comfort, but Maria still felt the weight of the decision. After much thought and discussion, Maria decided she could not ignore her responsibilities. She prepared for the journey, packing only what was necessary and leaving behind the familiar spaces she had come to love. Jack helped her, guiding her with quiet reassurance, offering practical advice, and sharing memories of the ranch to carry with her. The morning of her departure was filled with a mixture of emotions. The sun rose gently over the fields, casting a soft glow over the horses grazing in the pastures. Jack walked with Maria to her vehicle, his hands steady but his heart heavy. "Take care of yourself," he said. "And remember, this ranch, this life, it's waiting for you when you return." Maria nodded, fighting back tears. "I will, Jack. Thank you for believing in me, for giving me a chance when no one else would. I'll come back as soon as I can." She paused, looking around at the familiar sights, the barn, the fields, the horses she had learned to care for, and then back at Jack. "I promise." As the vehicle drove away, Jack watched, feeling the emptiness return briefly, but also a quiet pride. Maria was strong, capable, and brave. He knew she would handle her responsibilities with the same grace and determination she had shown on the ranch. And he knew that when she returned, their bond would be even stronger for having faced this challenge. During her absence, Jack kept the ranch running with diligence. He thought of Maria often, recalling her laughter, her steady hands, and the way she had transformed the space with her presence. He wrote letters, sending small notes of encouragement and sharing stories of the animals and the land. Each letter was a bridge between them, a reminder that distance could not weaken the connection they had built. Maria, in turn, carried the ranch in her thoughts as she handled her responsibilities. She missed the wide open skies, the smell of hay, and the quiet companionship she had found with Jack. Yet she drew strength from their shared experiences, from the knowledge that they trusted and respected each other deeply. Each letter she received from Jack was a reassurance, a reminder that she was valued, seen, and appreciated. By the time she returned to the ranch, weeks later, both Jack and Maria had changed in subtle but meaningful ways. They had learned patience, resilience, and the power of trust. Their reunion was quiet but filled with emotion, a testament to the bond that had been tested and strengthened by separation. Jack met her at the driveway, his smile wide and welcoming, and Maria ran to him, the distance of the weeks melting away in that single embrace. They walked back to the ranch house together, hand in hand, speaking softly about the days they had spent apart, the lessons they had learned, and the future they wanted to build. The challenges they had faced only deepened their connection, reinforcing the respect, trust, and affection that had grown steadily from the day Maria first stepped onto the ranch. From that point on, Jack and Maria worked side by side with renewed purpose. They faced each day with teamwork, laughter, and a shared understanding that life was best when met together. The storm, the distance, and the trials of responsibility had tested them, but they had emerged stronger, more confident, and more certain that they belonged in each other's lives. And as they sat on the porch one evening, watching the sun set over the fields, they both knew that the bond they shared was no longer fragile or uncertain. It had been tested, proven, and strengthened by the trials of life. They had discovered a partnership built on trust, respect, and the quiet, enduring strength of two people who had chosen each other when the world might have overlooked them. Maria returned to the ranch on a bright, clear morning. The sun glistened off the dew-covered grass, painting the fields in shades of gold and green. Jack was already outside, checking on the animals, his hat shading his eyes from the early sun. As soon as he spotted Maria walking along the driveway, a smile spread across his face, a mixture of relief, pride, and joy. Maria waved, her own smile lighting up her face. The weeks away had been challenging, filled with responsibilities and moments of doubt, but the thought of returning to the ranch and Jack had carried her through. She had missed the rhythm of ranch life, the quiet companionship, and the sense of purpose she had found there. Jack hurried to meet her, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Welcome back, Maria," he said warmly. "The ranch hasn't been the same without you." Maria laughed softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "I missed it too, Jack. I missed this place and I missed you." She paused, feeling the weight of her words, but relieved to say them aloud. Jack's eyes softened and he reached out to take her hand, squeezing it gently. The first few days after her return were filled with joy and a renewed sense of partnership. Maria quickly resumed her duties, moving through the ranch with confidence and care. She checked on the horses, guided the cattle, and helped repair fences with a skill and efficiency that impressed even Jack. But more than her competence, it was her spirit, her laughter, and her presence that brought life back to the ranch in a way nothing else could. Jack noticed how the animals responded to her, just as they had before. Horses nickered softly when she approached, cattle moved calmly under her guidance, and even the dogs seemed to sense the warmth she carried. There was a harmony on the ranch now, a rhythm that had been missing before Maria's arrival. It was clear that she was no longer just a guest or helper. She was part of the land, part of the life Jack had built, and part of his heart. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Jack spoke quietly. "Maria, I've been thinking a lot about how life brought you here. I know the world didn't always see your worth, but I do. I want you to know that you are valued, respected, and loved for who you are, not for what anyone thinks you should be." Maria felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his words. "Thank you, Jack," she said softly. "I've never felt so accepted in my life. You've given me a place where I belong, and I don't take that for granted." She reached out to place her hand over his, a gesture of trust and gratitude. Their days continued with this quiet rhythm of work and companionship, but there was a new layer to their connection now, a deep emotional bond that had grown from shared challenges, patience, and understanding. They laughed together, worked together, and even in moments of silence, they felt the comfort of each other's presence. One morning, Jack suggested they take a walk through the farthest fields of the ranch. The sun was bright, the sky a perfect shade of blue, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of grass and wildflowers. As they walked, Jack spoke of his hopes for the future, the dreams he had nurtured quietly for years. "I've always wanted someone to share this life with," he said. "Someone who understands the land, the animals, and the effort it takes to care for it. I never thought I'd find that person until you came along." Maria smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "And I never thought I'd find a place where I could belong and be appreciated for who I am. This ranch, this life, it feels like home now, and you've made it that way." Jack stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes were steady, filled with emotion he didn't often express. "Maria, I know we've only had a short time together, but I feel like we've known each other far longer. I want you to be here, not just on the ranch, but in my life. I want us to build a future together, facing whatever comes our way as partners." Maria's heart raced, her thoughts filled with the journey they had taken together, the challenges, the storms, the laughter, and the shared moments of growth. She realized that she had come to care for Jack deeply, not just for his strength and wisdom, but for his kindness, patience, and unwavering belief in her. "Jack," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I want that too. I want to be here with you to share this life and face everything together." Jack smiled, relief and joy evident on his face. He reached out to take both of her hands in his. "Then we'll do it," he said. "We'll build this life together step by step, day by day. No one else matters, just us, this ranch, and the life we create together." From that moment, their partnership took on a new depth. They worked side by side with renewed purpose, their connection strengthened by the knowledge that they had chosen each other freely and wholeheartedly. The ranch thrived under their combined care, each day bringing small achievements and moments of joy. Maria's presence had brought not only efficiency and care, but also a sense of warmth and harmony that had transformed the place. The community, too, began to notice the change. Neighbors who had once questioned Jack's choice now respected the partnership they had built. Maria's strength, kindness, and diligence earned their admiration, and the couple's quiet teamwork became a model of what could be achieved through mutual respect and shared effort. One afternoon, a visitor came to the ranch, a friend of Jack's from the county seat. He looked around, impressed by the well-kept fields, the thriving animals, and the sense of order and care. "Jack," he said, "I have to admit I didn't expect this, but Maria, she's incredible. You've chosen well." Jack smiled, glancing at Maria, who was brushing a horse nearby. "I knew what I wanted," he said simply. "It wasn't about appearances or convenience. It was about finding someone real, someone who cared and who could share this life with me." Maria overheard the conversation and felt a surge of pride and happiness. For so long, she had been overlooked, dismissed, and undervalued. But here on the ranch, she had found a place where she was appreciated for her heart, her effort, and her presence. She had found belonging, trust, and love, all in one. As the weeks passed, Jack and Maria continued to build their life together, embracing both the challenges and the quiet joys of ranch living. They celebrated small milestones like a calf being born healthy, a repaired fence standing strong against the wind, or a successful harvest from their garden. Each success, no matter how small, was shared and celebrated, strengthening their bond further. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and purple and the stars began to twinkle, Jack and Maria sat on the porch, sharing a simple meal. The air was filled with the sounds of the ranch, the lowing of cows, the soft nicker of horses, and the distant calls of birds returning to their nests. It was peaceful, comforting, and perfect in its simplicity. Jack looked at Maria, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, when I first saw you, I never imagined we'd come this far. I knew I wanted someone genuine, someone strong and kind, but I didn't know I'd find someone who would change my life completely. You've made this ranch more than just land and animals. You've made it home." Maria's eyes glistened, and she reached out to take his hand. "And you've given me a life I never dreamed possible, a life full of meaning, purpose, and love. I feel like I've finally found where I belong." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky darken and the stars appear. The bond they had formed was no longer fragile or uncertain. It had been tested through storms, distance, and challenges, and had emerged stronger, unshakable, and beautiful in its simplicity. In the months that followed, their life on the ranch continued with the same rhythm: work, laughter, learning, and quiet companionship. Yet now there was a new layer of joy and contentment, a sense that they were building something lasting and meaningful together. Every sunrise and sunset was shared, every challenge faced together, and every small victory celebrated side by side. One afternoon, as they walked through the fields, Maria paused to admire the view. "Jack," she said softly, "this life, it's not perfect, but it feels right. I've never felt so at peace, so complete." Jack nodded, taking her hand in his. "That's the beauty of it," he replied. "Life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful. It just has to be real, and we've found that with each other." And as they stood together, hand in hand, looking over the land they cared for and the life they had built, both Jack and Maria knew that they had found something rare and precious. They had discovered that true happiness and fulfillment came not from appearances, convenience, or expectation, but from trust, respect, and the courage to choose each other when the world might have overlooked them. The ranch thrived, their bond deepened, and their hearts were full. Jack and Maria had not only built a life together, they had created a home, a partnership, and a love that would endure through every storm, challenge, and season. And as the stars shone above, casting their gentle light over the fields, they knew that the best was yet to come, because they had chosen each other, and that choice had changed everything.